Here you are going to see lot of options available, lot of configurations that you have to do. If you want to become an open source developer, you want to contribute as an open source developer, you want to make a profile on GitHub, which is a very good thing for a software developer or software engineer. In that case, you can just add details to your profile, and then it can gain more popularity, and you may be directly contacted with the recruitment team of good companies, right? Many people, they do a lot of contribution on GitHub, and their profile gets lots of exposure. And I know some people who got into companies like Walmart, Facebook through their contribution on GitHub only, right? So let us see what all we can configure in our GitHub account. Related to DevOps, we will first see what are the settings that are related to DevOps and that will be used while working as a DevOps engineer, right? So the first thing that we are going to discuss about is authentication. How you're going to authenticate your GitHub account and how you can secure your GitHub account, right? The first authentication method that you can configure in Jenkins, let me open Jenkins as well. The first authentication method that you can use to configure your GitHub account on Jenkins will be username and password. Your username and password that you have provided. Second will be SSH key. Okay. And the third will be personal access token. Okay. Now, if you are logging through your GitHub web server, then in that case, you can use your username and password. So first, let us see how we can secure our account. So here, the first option that you see is your configuration related to your public profile. Here, you can provide your name that will be displayed in your on GitHub and will be visible to everyone. You can also declare your public email if you don't want to set up the email address through which you have created this account. If you want to change that email address, you can do it from here. It is a very good practice to tell about yourself, what you are working on. If you are contributing on open source project, right? URL will be your GitHub URL profile. And if you're working for a company, just mention it here, your location as well. And here you'll be able to see that you can change your profile visibility and set up your own preferences. If you're looking for job and for that purpose you are contributing on GitHub, then you can just click on this option so that your profile is visible to recruiters, right? So GitHub is also used for recruiting people. Okay, so these are the general settings, which is very easy to understand. You can fill up all the details. Then comes the account, right? Now here you see some options that you may not be much aware of, like like exporting your account data or setting up your successor settings, right? So the first option is easy to understand. If you want to change your username, just click on it and you'll be able to change your username. It will first warn you what are the effects that is going to happen if you're changing your username. But if you're satisfied with the username that you have already selected, then do not change your username. Okay. Now, if let's say a company is working and their account is on GitHub, okay, and they want to audit everything related with all the developers account, right? So let's say you've created your account and your company has created a Python script, okay, or maybe some other script. What it does, it scans all your data which is available on GitHub, right? So if you are working in a company and if you are not doing any coding related to company, then that will be easily detected, right? So for that purpose, you may be exporting your account data to your email address or to the email address. This one. Password. Okay, so in this case, if you want to export your data, you have to click this start export button, and all the data of your account will be delivered to the email address where you want to send the data, right? Your data will be sent into Excel format, and that will be scanned by the Python script or some other language script that your company may have created, and they can set up a dashboard to find out what each developer is doing, whether they are following company policy or they are just misusing the account. These scenarios happen when they want to fire you, right? So be careful. And if such policy is there in your company, in that case, do not do anything which is not related with your company work, right? Then we have successor settings. This is to provide the detail of someone who is going to be responsible for this account if the person who is currently holding the account leaves the company or may die or something may happen to him. So in that case, you will be making other person as your successor, right? If your manager is currently handling this account, and if he wants to leave the company, then he can just suggest some email address and name, and according to that, the account will be transferred to him, right? Appearance is quite easy. You don't have to do a lot of changes in your appearance. That is just look and feel of your GitHub account, right? And then we are going to understand about password and authentication, which is important for our DevOps purpose, right? So accessibility notifications, they are just a common thing. We are going to understand first password and authentication so that we know what is going in our account and how people can access our GitHub account. Or if I want to access my GitHub account through some programs or maybe some tools like Jenkins, then how I am going to do it, right? So here we have password and authentication. Right. Okay. Until then, I'll show you how to configure your GitHub account. So go to Jenkins, manage Jenkins, and from there you will find an option called credentials. Click on that. Then you can go to systems, global credentials. Okay. And then you can add credentials. If your account is accessible only through username and password, then you have to select username and password. Or if you want to use personal access token, in that case, you will be using secret file. Or if you want to use SSH key, then in that case, you will be selecting SSH username with private key, right? So here, let's say I want to access my account using username and password. In this case, whatever the username and password you will be setting here for Jenkins, Jenkins will be able to access your account, your GitHub account with these credentials, right? Always mention ID means what you're going to do with this. So I can write this is for GitHub access, and description, Jenkins will use this credential for accessing GitHub account. Okay, still loading. And then you can create your account. So I can provide my password, and then I'll be able to create a credential for my GitHub account. So when I'll be creating any job on Jenkins, when I'll try to create any automation for Jenkins, in that case, I will be providing, let's say I want to do checkout. Okay, I want to, or instead of that, let me call it clone repo. Okay, and here, and this Jenkins job, I will be configuring my GitHub details so that Jenkins can access my GitHub account. And here only I'll tell which repository I want to clone. So in that case, Jenkins will be cloning that particular repository only. So we'll go to source code management, select Git, and we will be selecting our GitHub repository. Let me go to GitHub repository. Is running slow, others are running fast. Okay, and from here you can select your credentials. Whatever credentials you had set up with Jenkins, you can select here. You can provide the GitHub URL, and then when you run this job, Jenkins will be able to clone your repository on your local system. You don't need to run the git clone command. Jenkins will automatically do it for you, right? I don't know why GitHub is very slow. Okay, and you can just do save and apply, and Jenkins is going to clone your repository on your local system. Before that, you also need to configure Git in your Jenkins instance, Jenkins server. For that, go to manage Jenkins, select tools, and then go to Git installation and provide a name to your Git installation, like I have called it as default Git. And then you have to select the path of your Git executable, right? This is Git, not GitHub. So when you'll install Git on your system, you'll find that it is located either in program files or maybe in program files 86. So my is present in program files, and my git exe is in bin. So I'll copy this complete path and paste it in Jenkins. After bin, I will also add git.exe. If you don't do this, Jenkins will not able to run your Git tool, and it will not be able to clone your repository in your local system, right? So two configurations are important if you are working with Jenkins and Git. The first one is configuring your git.exe. The second one is adding username and password or credentials of your GitHub account, right? Which you can do through manage Jenkins and then credentials, and git.exe you can do by configuring tools in Jenkins. Don't worry about Jenkins. We'll be covering everything in detail about Jenkins. We are just discussing about our GitHub and Git tool, how they can be used to work, right? So let's say I have created this job, which is called clone repo, and I want to provide my repository detail. So here, if I go to source code management, in repository URL, I can just add the details, right? And here I can specify which branch I want to build, which particular branch I want to build. So in my GitHub repo, if I have master branch, and if I want to build master branch, then I can mention as master, or I can change it to develop or feature branch. So here I have selected as master branch. So now I can apply and save, and GitHub credentials will be configured, and my GitHub code will be, my repository code will be checked out when we run this job, right? Let us go back to our GitHub account. Let me see if it is working fine now. It's still very slow. Why is it so? Okay, until that opens, let us discuss the Git workflow, how you actually work in your GitHub repository when you are doing a real-time development. So when you join any team, that project repository you may find are having some branches already existing. The first one may be the master branch or the main branch. It can be master branch, or they may call it as main branch. Second branch will be your develop branch. Okay. Third will be the branch which you are going to create according to your task. Let's say you are given a task to add authentication method to any website, right? Which means you want to create the login page. Okay. Your role is to create a login page on your website. And on Jira is a tool which is used for tracking project management, right? And on Jira, let's say your task ID is 101. Okay. So now on your GitHub repository, what you'll do, you will create a new branch from the develop branch, not from your main branch. You'll be creating it from develop branch. Why is it very slow? Okay, so your branch name will be like Jira 101 and /detail. Maybe you're working on authentication, so it will be authentication, right? And now what you'll find, as soon as you create this branch, all the code which was present in develop branch has been copied, and everything is present in your new branch. So you can clone this on your local system, and you can add your code to do the changes, right? Once you have done your changes, you have to push the code back to this branch only. Okay. Once you have pushed your code to this branch, then you are going to ask your team members to review your code, right? For that purpose, let's say this is our repository. Slow. Okay. And let's say we had a master branch and a develop branch already existing, right? And you join the team. In that case, you may have to create a new branch called Jira 101/authentication, right? So here you can create a New branch. Why is very slow? Okay. So here now you can just create a new branch. What is it? Yeah. Okay. So here you are getting an option to create a new branch. Click on new branch. And now you can see you have two branches already existing. Ignore the feature branch. You had two branches already existing. And then the task that you are working on required a new branch to be created, and you had created a new branch, right? So if you choose this branch, if you switch to this branch, you'll find that everything that was present in your develop branch is now available in your branch as well, right? So now, if you have completed your code, then you may be requesting your team member or the person who has assigned you the task to review your code, right? It doesn't mean that you are going to mail him or ping him on your communication channel and then share the code with him so that he can review. For that purpose, what you need to do is you need to create a pull request. Okay. And let us first do some changes here. Let us add one more file here called authentication.py. Auth.py. Okay. And you have committed the changes directly to this branch. Okay. And now you want that this code should be reviewed, and if everything is okay, then this should be merged with your develop branch, right? For that purpose, you'll be creating a pull request. You're not going to share the code with your team member and then ask him to review it. You have to create a pull request, and then here you are going to select pull request option, and you want, since you have created your code, your branch from develop branch, so your base branch will be developed and compare, and it will be compared with the branch on which you have been working, right? And title, you can write that I have added, or you can simply say that authentication code review. Okay. And then you can write some comment or description here that I have done the changes for authentication. Please review, right? And then you'll create a pull request. Okay. On the right hand side, you will see the name of the reviewers who is going to review your code. Here we don't have any reviewer because only one person is working here. In real-time scenario, as you click here, you'll be able to see lots of name in the drop down. And finally, you'll be able to create new pull request, right? Once a person has reviewed your code, when he finds everything is running fine, then in that case, he will approve it. And finally, he'll be able to merge the pull request. When he'll click on merge the pull request, he will write all the code seems to be fine. Merging it with the develop branch, right? And then he can close this pull request and I forgot to merge it. So what I'll do, I'll first merge the pull request and then I will close it. Okay. So now whatever you have done in your branch is merged with the develop branch, right? So earlier we were not having auth.py in develop branch, but after merging, we can see that we also have auth.py branch present in our own develop branch, right? So in real time scenario, you have to work like this. You'll be creating a branch. You'll be creating a pull request, assign the reviewer who is going to review your code. And once the code review has been done, it is the duty of the reviewer to merge the code with the base branch from where you had created this branch, right? Then there may be some other member who is also working on some other feature. He will also follow the same process, and his code will also be merged with the develop branch. Let's say we had planned for first 3 weeks to do some development and then release a version called 1.1, right? So until this 3 weeks, everyone who is working on some feature or adding some feature will be completing his task, creating the pull request, and then his code or her code will be merged with the develop branch, right? Once everyone has completed everything, then it is the duty of the team lead to create a new pull request, right? A new pull request will be created, which will be for merging the develop branch into the master branch now. Okay, this master branch now. So here you can write initial release was, right? And your base branch will be master here, and you're going to compare it with the develop branch, and you can write creating first release of the application, right? And then team lead will be creating a new pull request, right? Which will be reviewed. Just hold for a second. Okay, so now your team lead will be sending this pull request to be reviewed by his senior members. He may be your technical lead or maybe your manager. So he will add their name in this reviewers list, right? Now it is the duty of your manager or your release manager who is going to merge this pull request and provide some comments like all okay, and he can just close the pull request, right? Now I can see in my master branch that I have everything that was developed by someone in this branch and which was merged with the develop branch, and finally it was merged with the master branch, right? Now this master branch code will be used to create new builds. Okay, new builds. It will be creating new builds, new packages. Let's say a new exe has been created, and this particular exe will be deployed to some cluster, and it will be made available to users who can directly use your application. Let us say if this is Amazon website, in that case, using this master branch only, one exe of your Amazon website with all other dependencies will be created, And this exe will only be deployed on a server which will be available to users who wants to do shopping on amazon.com, right? Before that, you can also use your own branch which you have created for completing your task. When you'll be creating this branch, obviously you are going to compile and test whether everything is working or not. But in this case also, you'll be creating exes, right? Those exes will not be used for deployment. They will be used only for your testing purpose, right? Once you have done your testing, if you are satisfied that whatever code you have written is working fine, then only you'll be creating the pull request, and that pull request will be reviewed by your team lead and it will be merged with the develop branch, right? Now again, exe with the code present in develop branch will be created, and that will again be tested by other team members. And when everything is fine, then only the code will be merged with the master branch, right? And now whatever you have merged in your master branch will be considered as a finalized code, and a new exe will be generated, and that exe will be taken, which will be deployed on any server and will be made live so that users can work on it, right? So this is the workflow that you are going to follow in your company. Whatever DevOps job role you will be getting, this will be the workflow in your company. If they are using GitHub, if they are using some other tool, in that case also a similar approach will be applied. But there will be 90% of chances that they are going to use GitHub only if they have implemented DevOps. Other tools like Bitbucket may also be used, or GitLab may also be used, but in most of the cases, you will always find GitHub, right? So now let us go back to our account. I think it's working fine now. And here we saw how we can set up our public details, public profile, and then we can export our account. Export our data, which will be in Excel format, and which can be scanned and taken care, scanned and taken care by your company's script for auditing purpose. And you can also set up your successor name so that if you are leaving the company, someone else is going to hold this account, right? Our main purpose was to understand how we are going to log in into our GitHub account, right? So you can log in on your GitHub account using various ways. One is like you can write a program, okay? And in that program, you can write a step where you want to access GitHub and do git cloning, okay? Git cloning of your repository. You may find a case that you have to do complete automation, 100% automation. So there, and that may be done through some programs or some scripts, right? So in a script only, you'll be running the git clone command. For that, you'll have to provide the credentials of your GitHub account in your program. Let's say if this is a Python program, then you are going to provide all the details in this Python program, right? Another way is like if you're working on a server on your system and you want to access this GitHub server using SSH keys. Okay. So in that case, your company may provide you SSH keys and you already have your username. So by providing your username and SSH key, you will be able to clone your repository on your local system, right? The third one, we have already done that yesterday, which will be accessing through username and password. Okay, username and password. Okay, in this case, in programming case, you'll not be using username and password, but you'll be using personal access token. Okay, So let us see how we can create a personal access token. So first we'll go to password and authentication and see what we can do here. Okay, so here you can change your password and create a new password. Let's say new password, I am creating something like that. And I have updated. Okay, so you can change your password from here. Right, personal access token is a random alphanumeric code which is generated. I'll tell you how to generate that. Yes, so our old password is not valid. You can change your password by just updating new details. Right, some problem is there with this GitHub account. Then we have option of setting up two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication means the credentials that you are providing, apart from that, one more layer of security will be available. Let's say this is the GitHub server. Then it may ask you to first provide your username and password, and then it may ask you to provide some OTPs, and then only it will allow you to access GitHub account, right? So if you enable two-factor authentication on your GitHub account, again, password problem is there. In that case, you can set up your mobile number to get one OTP, and until you don't provide the OTP, you will not be able to access your GitHub account. Or you can add a passkey again. Okay, which is similar to your fingerprint or facial recognition, which is not required to do it, because in real-time scenarios, you will not be getting a laptop or device which will need a facial recognition, right? So in most of the cases, you have your OTPs set with your phones, right? Then we have sessions. Sessions is used for finding out who is accessing your GitHub account and from which location, as well as from which IP address, right? So if someone has stolen your code, you can go to sessions and find out who has actually logged into your account. Let's say I was working in this company and I left, but I still have the username and password. So what I can do is I can log in back to this GitHub account of my company and just copy the code, right? So if such thing, if my company want to detect such things, then they can just check the session who has logged in from where, and then they can report to the authorities, right? Then we have SSH keys and GP keys, right? So SSH keys and GP keys, they are used for setting up again authentication with your GitHub account. And this is generally used if you're not using the UI part of your system, right? UI part of your GitHub account. Your company follows a policy where you can only provide SSH keys and passwords, SSH keys with key pairs, which will be used to access your account, right? So now if you want to clone your repository using SSH key, then in that case, why it's slow? Let's say this is my repository. Okay, so in our repository, we had two types of URL. One URL was with HTTPS, and other URL was with SSH. Let it open. Very good. It's good. Okay. And then we have personal access token. Personal access token, you can go to your accounts, then select account settings, and then scroll down to developer settings, right? In developer settings, you will find an option to create personal account, a personal access token, right? What happened? Okay, so this personal access token that you are going to create will be used in your programs to access your GitHub account, or you can also configure your personal access token with Jenkins so that Jenkins can access your GitHub repository, right? Personal access token becomes mandatory to configure if you have set up multi-factor authentication, like you have set up username and password, but apart from this, you have also set up OTPs to get access on your GitHub account. So if you have set up multi-factor authentication, in that case, you can access your GitHub account through any application only using your personal access token, right? So personal access token will be mandatory if you have set up multi-factor authentication. You can create your personal access token by going to developer settings, and then you can go to personal access token, select classic if you are new to GitHub, and here again select generate new token, and it will generate some random alphanumeric keyword for you, right? And finally, you can use in your Jenkins to configure your GitHub credentials using personal access token, right? So you can add a new credentials, and instead of using username and password, now you're going to use secret access. The secret will be the personal access token which you have created on your GitHub account. Here also you'll be providing some details in your ID and description, like what this credential is going to do, what this personal access token is going to do in your account, right? So 3 things are very important to understand in your account, because when you, let's say you were told in your interview that you know how to work with GitHub, then your manager will directly ask you to create these credentials parameters, credentials methods. And if you're not able to do so, then you will definitely lose your good impression, right? So you should know 3 very important things about your GitHub account, like creating your credentials, creating your personal access token, and configuring it with Jenkins. If Jenkins tool is being used in your team, then you must be knowing how to you must know how to configure your Jenkins GitHub credentials with your Jenkins tool, right? And you should always know the GitHub workflow which we have discussed, right? Now there is one more thing which is called branch protection, right? If you didn't understand any of this part, don't worry. I think there is some issue with